Laudetur Jesus Christus. Praised be Jesus Christ. A warm welcome to all of you joining us for our live broadcast here on this Sunday evening of Second Vespers, on this second Sunday of Easter, Divine Mercy Sunday, this afternoon here in Rome, coming to you from the Basilica, the Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major in the historic center of Rome. We are broadcasting live in just a few moments, the beginning of Vespers here, with the College of Cardinals participating. They've arrived and are seated as the celebration is about to begin. Seeing now, those of our television viewers can see the tomb of Pope Francis. We see the camera zooming out on the very, very simple tomb. Pope Francis was buried yesterday afternoon at 1 p.m., at 1 to 1:30, and the rite of burial there at St. Mary Major in Rome. We have also some of the public coming and visiting. They've been coming throughout the day ever since it was open for public visits to visit the tomb of Pope Francis there. As you will all know, Pope Francis, the funeral, the solemn funeral yesterday took place in St. Peter's Square with 250,000 people participating and another 150,000 lining the streets of Rome. The coffin was taken in procession from St. Peter's Square through the city of Rome to St. Mary Major, where in the rite of burial yesterday, the entombment took place in the Basilica of St. Mary Major, where Pope Francis wished to be buried. He's right next to the icon Salus Populi Romani, the Marian icon, Our Lady, Protectress, Salvation of Rome, the most famous icon in Rome, going back centuries, when she is known to have protected the city from a plague that was affecting the city. Pope Francis had a special devotion to her and visited St. Mary Major very often during his pontificate to pray before her, to bring his prayers before her, to give thanks for all that he was able to do in his ministry, and he wished to be buried close to her, so his tomb is just very close to that chapel, the Pauline Chapel, where the icon of Mary Salus Populi Romani is located. We can see the cardinals there, seated and ready for this Vespers celebration. The College of Cardinals, members who are all gathering in Rome now, most of whom present at yesterday's funeral, some from very distant lands. It's taken more time for them to arrive in Rome. All of them today, this afternoon, have had their own moment to visit the tomb of Pope Francis there, and they did that shortly before this broadcast started. Proceeding through the holy door as well of St. Mary Major, given we have the Jubilee year here, the Jubilee of Hope 2025. See beautiful flowers here adorning the area near the main altar, and giving us images of hope at this time. And this morning, Cardinal Pietro Parolin presided over a Mass in St. Peter's Square, the second of the Novum Diales, the morning, with an estimated 200,000 people participating, another huge turnout. Many also who were teenagers, adolescents, present for their Jubilee, which is taking place during these days. Our television viewers can see the cardinals are rising now to begin the celebration here of Second Vespers. presiding will be Cardinal Rolandas Krickas. He's from Lithuania. He's the assistant or coadjutor archbishop.
I just want to ask some of the folks over here, especially that bald brother over there, if you guys want to come sit up here, you got the youngest here. He is too cute not to be in the camera. The future leader that he is. If he doesn't want to come up, he doesn't have to. I don't know what your sweatshirt says to the young leader. William and Mary. Come on up and sit behind us. My law school classmate, who I haven't seen in so long, Tom. Come on the steps, man. I know you worked for the federal government at one point, and so come on up. Sit right here, brother.
They haven't laid me off yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, the limitations is up. I copied your notes in class. I love you. I'm just going to give you a hug.
Happy birthday, Michael. Birthday.
Okay. And anybody else who wants to come up? Sir, what's your name?
I'm Emmanuel. I'm good friends of your cousin Pam.
Emmanuel is friends with my cousin Pam, who sat there for the whole 25 hours. Wow. 25 hours. Pam, why don't you sit behind me now? Why are you sitting so far away? Now you're suddenly shy? Dr. Pamela Bailey, she's an emergency room doctor.
Yeah.
And who's the young man? The young man. Introduce him.
Moises.
Give it up for Moises. Right, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for being here.
We both work at the State Department.
You work in the State Department. Thank you for being out here today.
Right, thank you for your service.
Okay, now we can get back to our teaching.
So, the way they try to take our power is they start with the pen. And on January 20th, the pen started writing that we didn't have the right to citizenship even if we were born here. That we didn't have the right to learn our history if it said race, if it said diversity, that government should not function if we care about inclusion. These were all executive orders. I won't even go through all of them because there were too many to go through. Because chaos is not a cause, but chaos had a cause, and it started with these executive orders. But the lawsuits started immediately. This is what you have to understand, and I think people know. The lawsuits started immediately because our first tool in the toolbox, in addition to our voice, is our ability to have lawyers who go to court and say, this is unconstitutional. And actually, Mr. President, you don't have the power of the pen, Congress does, because the founders gave the pen to these people. The only reason these people have the pen is because we gave it to them as the people. So that litigation started winning, by the way. We won. There have been lawsuits that have won temporary orders. Temporary, they're ongoing. From Trump appointees. This is the other thing. It is not about a court system that has an ideology when we have the right judges on the bench. Another thing we fight for is making sure we have the right judges on the bench. The right judges aren't about what party they're affiliated with. The right judges are about whether their positions are principled on the law and on the facts. And so we have had Trump-appointed judges saying, oh, you can't do that. But we've had that because we've had lawyers that went into court. So then what happens? There are executive orders attacking lawyers for even representing clients and going to court saying, we'll use our pen to say, oh, Perkins Coie and others, you can't go in these buildings, which means you can't represent your clients, which means we're telling your clients not to hire you as law firms. By the way, these are private businesses.
Yes.
Last I heard, the Republican Party actually liked free market system and the private sector. We're talking about the private sector. We're also talking about public attorneys eventually, because we'll get to the not-for-profit attacks. But the point is, once you see the power of the ability to have rights and to have legal representation, we see an administration attack it. And then we see some law firms capitulate. But then we see some other law firms that stand up and go to court and say, it is unlawful for you to tell us that we can't represent our clients, to block us from public buildings, to represent our clients who have a legal right to be represented and a right to choose us. So they are litigating now in courts. But then let's go back to what we're seeing that you just called out. We are seeing people with rights, like just about Kilmar. It's about the fact that even when the government said, oh, we were wrong, that was an error. Oops. Literally, oops. And no, we won't go back and ask a dictator to return a person we should have never sent. And we know about all the other people, young men, Venezuelan, sent to El Salvador. First of all, Venezuelan, sent to El Salvador. That is not normal, people. Sent to El Salvador intentionally because it is a rights-abusing prison. And so we are seeing our American Civil Liberties Union as a member organization litigating to say, no, you can't. And many of these cases, there are restraining orders being entered against the government, and this administration saying, what exactly? What order? What order? Again, not normal. Not normal that this Supreme Court, which many of us would call a captured court, a court that has sadly lost a lot of public trust for ignoring its own case precedents. Even this court said, wait, no, we don't think you are abiding sufficiently to protect the rights of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So the courts, so this is the next line of attack, and we're seeing this moving now, is taking power away from the courts to be able to issue those orders that say, yeah, no, you can't do this. That if it's a nationwide injunction, that just means that a judge can say, you're going to hurt people everywhere. We think you don't have the right to do this. We are going to say you have to stop until we finish this litigation. We don't know how it's going to come out, but we think there's a strong enough case. There's enough likelihood you're going to hurt people all over the country that we're going to say you have to hold on that. That's all that means. And yet now we have elected officials trying to take the power from the courts to protect us from the harm of an administration that thinks chaos is a cause.
Explain that, what's going on.
Yeah, and well, I think to go back to the foundational point, which then leads us to this moment, is that, you know, this in many ways, what we are navigating through right now was the worst nightmare of the framers of the Constitution. We've talked about the fact they were not perfect. They certainly had flaws, but they tried to set us on a march toward a more perfect union. And at that Constitutional Convention that took place in Philadelphia, 1787, historians have assessed that the word that was used the most during the Constitutional Convention certainly wasn't what I may have thought that word would be. My first guess probably would have been democracy. Now, democracy was in heavy rotation. That's my music terminology. It was in heavy rotation, but it wasn't the word that was used the most. Probably would have said, well, what about liberty? It's also used frequently, but it wasn't the word that was used the most by the assessment of historians. Third guess, I probably would have said freedom. Also in heavy rotation, but was not the word that was used the most. The word that was used the most during the Constitutional Convention, when the framers were trying to construct this republic that we've now inherited, was demagogue.
Wow.
It was demagogue. Think about it. They were trying to break free from a world where kings dominated.
Wow.
And so they were trying to construct a system that would be resilient enough to prevent the emergence of a singular figure like a king. And that was the whole premise behind separate and co-equal branches of government. It's interesting because Alexander Hamilton apparently used the word the most, by some calculations, 13 or 14 different times during the Constitutional Convention. And he said his greatest fear for the future of this country that was being built was that one day a demagogue might get elected and over a 4-year period of time try to turn into a tyrant. It was the framers' worst fear and nightmare. And now we're confronting someone who's acting like a king as opposed to trying to govern like the president. But the thing is, we were given the tools to push back against it. That was the whole premise of separate and co-equal branches of government, which is why here in the Congress, as we sit here getting ready to enter into weeks of debate around this reckless, dangerous, un-American budget that they're trying to jam down our throats, is that we don't work for a president. We don't have a monarch. We don't have a dictator. In America, we have a democracy. The people of the House and the Senate who serve in the House and the Senate need to recognize that we work for the American people. And we've got to serve the interests of the American people. That's the system that we inherited. And that's also why you've got judges who were given lifetime appointments so that they would be free of the political pressure that might otherwise accompany someone trying to act like a king who has the power to appoint but to get rid of a judge, or, as in some instances, having a judge that has to seek re-election. That doesn't exist in our system, and that's why we've seen some of the resilience, I think, at this moment.
What are they doing in the House about this impeaching of judges? Can you mention that for a second?
Well, I think they've tried to move legislation to reduce the power of judges to be able to make the independent decisions that they are making right now, the reach of those decisions, precisely because lawyers like Maya and others have had such success. We talked about this earlier. At this point, more than 200 different lawsuits have been filed. There's been a flood, the zone approach, right, with all of this unconstitutional and unlawful action and executive orders, but that's been met with a flood, an avalanche of righteous litigation. And the American people are winning in court, not losing. And because the American people are winning, Republicans in the House are trying to now change the rules, strip judges of jurisdiction. But let's be clear, we are not going to let it happen.
I mean, that is so phenomenal. But so let me add here, and this is why Maya's incredible presence here, important reminder that there are areas we have to fight. So the first thing is, you said immediately when he started pushing illegal executive orders, you all tied them up in court. And this is the amazing thing. Trump appointed judges. Obama appointed judges. Bush appointed judges. All across the board, you're seeing the judges step up and stop them, right? That's correct. These cases, and sometimes it's injunctions, but sometimes we're winning. Even the Supreme Court, which is 3 people on that court he put in place, have come out and have been stopping him from doing some of the things. The other arena is what you and I have to do. It is legislative, procedural, in every way possible. It's one of the reasons why I stood for 25 hours to say, what can I do to do things in this body with the levers we have, even though we're in the minority, in the levers we have. But the other arena we have for is what you have said over and over again, is the power of the public. Because the power of people in a democracy is greater than the people in power. And it is what our founders got right when they broke with the formation of governments all throughout history. This is not going to be because we all pray the same. We're not a theocracy. It's not going to be divine right of kings and queens because people are being this idea that we surrender our rights to a monarchy. It's not even going to be the power of the sword where people, through military strength, oppress the people, autocracies. We are going to form a democracy. And the debates at the time, powerfully written in the Federalist Papers, the arguments were that we were not going to concentrate power in any individual, but we were going to have 3 branches of co-equal branches of government. And what you see from President Trump so far is his willingness to immediately try to attack the powers of the other two branches. One, by saying, I'm going to move through the complicity of other Republicans in the House and do things that are not going to be questioned. Your job as Article 1 branch of the government, Congress, is to provide oversight. There's going to be no hearings. Do not have a hearing about Elon Musk scraping data from people's personal data, their Social Security data, their tax data. Not one hearing about this unelected billionaire causing all this havoc. When we have scandals like Signalgate, not one hearing about whether this is the pattern and practice which we're finding out that Hegseth is doing. We're going to eviscerate the power of the Article 1 branch to provide a check. And then, God forbid, if Article 3 branch is going to try to check my power, now I'm going to start threatening judges. Now I'm going to start saying things on my platforms that literally have had threats on judges increase over 100%. Literally, there's a judge in New Jersey who years ago, Judge Solis, years ago, she had someone come to her house trying to murder her and instead murders her son and shoots and wounds her husband. Her son's name was Daniel Anderall. And then what he does, what's happening now through this whipping up of hate against people, judges, Republican-appointed judges, who are standing against the Trump administration, what's happening to now is now they are getting threatened as well. Literally, they're getting pizza sent to their private homes in the name of the murdered son of Judge Solis, that Daniel Anderall just sent you a pizza to show, as if to threaten them, we know where you live. And so we're creating a context where democracies erode is when our norms and traditions begin to reduce and threats of violence rise. I've seen what they've done to some of my Senate colleagues, Republican colleagues, who had dared to even question, should we be confirming Hegseth, the most unqualified Secretary of Defense? Just by mentioning or questioning it, you're suddenly seeing them be dragged and threatened. And so what you see right now is the surrendering of power of checks and balances from the Article 1 branch of government. We are not doing our oversight authority. We're not holding hearings. We're not allowing a legislation that we've passed with the power of the pen, the power of the purse. That's being taken back by the executive with no accountability, no checks. And now they're attacking the Article 3 branch of government. This is a sign of autocracies, times of authoritarian leadership, not signs of democracies. This is the kind of things that are at stake right now. And the reason why we're asking people to come down here if you have the time, the day's gotten warm now, it's not as freezing as it was 6 o'clock in the morning when you and I were shaking trying to look tough. We're not shaking anymore. The sun is climbing to its apex. It's almost midday. We've been out here. We're in our 4th hour of sitting here. We're thankful for the joggers have come and sat with us. Just running through the plaza, they've decided to stop and stay. I'm so grateful for the runners making me feel guilty. Run home at the end of this, whatever time we stop. There are a lot of people out here on the plaza stopping. If you want to come down, come and join us in this conversation. Come and join us. We're grounding ourselves in who are we? That question, the moral underpinnings. I saw a man with a collar. Hello, sir. Father, how are you? Pastor, it's good to see you. What's your name? Reverend. Then come sit behind us, Rev. Come on, sit behind us, because you're going to bring us back to the faith traditions. We're talking about the moral underpinnings of this country. The founders were all about public virtue. They pulled from the great philosophers of the day about what it takes to build a good society. That's what's under assault. But the biggest immediacy that's under assault, that we want people who are watching this and streaming to go into the DMs, sneak up into Hakeem's DMs, sneak up. It's okay today to sneak. It's for religious purposes only. Sneak up into Hakeem's DMs. Sneak up into my DMs if you'd like to, and tell us your story. Tell us what motivates you. What's urgency? What are you afraid of? I see these women with these beautiful babies. Thank you for being here. Come on up here and sit there. We need more cuteness with Hakeem and I here. We need more cuteness. Come on, sit right here in front of me. This is how politicians look good. Is put babies in the picture. But we want to hear from you today. We're going to sit here. We don't know how long we're going to sit here, but I imagine it's going to be as long as it's warm. The sun's going up, rising in the east, coming up above the Capitol. Come here. Hi. But this is about our democracy. But the most urgency thing, and I think that, Hakeem, that you and I talked about why we're sitting here is the urgency of a 2-week break. Congress has been out and about. They've been holding town halls. They've been traveling the world. They've been going to El Salvador. We've seen heroic actions by Congress people all around. But now they're coming back, and the Republican leadership of this side of the Capitol, not the higher side. I think this is on an angle up there in the Senate, right? That's the higher side. What is the immediate threat?
Don't push me here. I'm from Brooklyn.
Close to the edge?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. That was Grandmaster Flash. He's actually from the Bronx. But I think we face this moment, as Corey indicated, where we will come back into session tomorrow, and we'll be faced with an existential struggle to defeat a Republican effort to try to jam a very reckless budget down the throats of the American people, which is totally inconsistent with the approach that many of them spent all last year talking about, which was that they were going to try to drive down the high cost of living in the United States of America. They promised to lower costs. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. And we believe we have to build an affordable economy. That's what we should be working on, right, to make life better for everyday Americans. But instead, we got a budget that's in front of us that is trying to enact the largest Medicaid cut in American history. It will hurt children, hurt families, hurt women, hurt seniors, hurt people with disabilities, close hospitals, close nursing homes. People will die if this budget is successful. That's how urgent the fight is. And we're going to stand on the side of the health care of the American people. And we need the American people to join us in this righteous struggle, because this budget is unacceptable, it's unconscionable, it's un-American, and we're going to do everything we need to bury it in the ground, never to rise again.
Yo, Brooklyn.
Oh. Brooklyn stole my Nets. I want them back in Newark.
Hey, you stole the WNBA from us for a while, so I just want to reinforce both what Senator Booker and what our leader Jeffries has said. But I want to tell you, I want to say one thing about the attacks, because in addition to the attacks on ignoring Congress, on coming for the powers of the court, the attacks that we are seeing on the ability to organize people outside of government, to have a voice, or to provide services to people outside of government. Nonprofit organizations are under attack by this administration. You say Doge, I say Vera Institute, which is doing public safety programs and supporting public safety programs in community, not only had their federal grant snatched, Doge showed up at their doors demanding their information unlawfully. A not-for-profit. They are not going to stop with Vera Institute. They are using and abusing the positions they are in to threaten the very people who are not even in government, just trying to help somebody. And that is what's happening. And the cuts, when we're talking about cuts, people bleed. And we should put names behind them. You know, Sarah in South Dakota had a son who has seizures 1 to 5 times a day. Had to quit her job to try to save her son. It is Medicaid that helps pay for her health care to do that. Or Jasmine in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, with 2 kids, who was taking care of other people's children when she fell and became disabled, and it's Medicaid that was taking care of her. And by the way, farm country, when our leader says we can't let this hurt people, farmers are eligible for Medicaid. The people delivering our food are eligible. The same with hunger. We have farmers who are hungry, and they get food stamps. We have teachers. We have public servants. We have people who do all kinds of work. So this is who we're talking about. But it is the civil rights community has a pact because they are trying to make us all fearful. They're trying to make judges afraid. They're trying to make legislators afraid. They're also trying to make us afraid. And we have signed not only a letter to the American public that says we will not be silent. You cannot threaten us into silence when it comes to people like Sarah or Jasmine or anybody else. But we also ask you to sign that pledge because the only way they win is when they try to take our voice and our power. Go to civilrights.org and please sign the pledge. But when you are there at civilrights.org, you will see a link where you can send a message to your senator or your member of Congress saying, do not cut our health care. Do not cut food for the hungry. Do not take dollars out of our classrooms and away from our kids to put that money in the pockets of billionaires who don't need it. Their kids in private school, y'all, they don't need it. The people who need it, that's our money, by the way. You pay that. So you should get it back. So please do that. And the other thing I will say is we will not be silent. We will be at the National Press Club on Wednesday with Vera Institute, with Planned Parenthood, with representatives. They're even trying to threaten our funders. People have the power to decide they want to give us money. Our funders will be there, and universities and colleges, because they're trying to tell us we can't learn. They're trying to tell us our children can't stand up and have a voice if they don't want to be attacked. So all I am saying to you is we will not be silent. We have leaders who will not be silent. And we are all leaders. So we ask you, do not be silent. Use your voice because you have power.
Let's give it up for Maya Wiley.
And so we want you all to understand, and I know we've got, Pastor, come on down and sit next to me, please. We want everybody to understand that we started this with an understanding that it is a Sunday morning. It's the last day before Congress returns to session. They've been away for 2 weeks. And we wanted to have a different kind of conversation. We can't keep doing things like business as usual. We have to think of creative new things to do. And so Hakeem and I thought, let's sit on the steps of the Capitol, open up a live feed right before the sun rises, and begin a conversation. The first things we talked about were our faith traditions. This nation is undergirded by people who were imperfect like all, but sought to create here on this soil a grand experiment, an experiment that has influenced the world over, as more and more people have looked towards our constitutional principles and tried to instill them. When Europe was being overcome with totalitarianism, what they began to look towards is the democratic ideals that were advanced by the United States of America. Our ideals have fundamental values. In fact, Pastor, this is where we're going to lead into you. It is this, the founders in the Declaration of Independence, these imperfect geniuses, they laid out this idea of our democracy, but then they said the thing to make it work, they ended the Declaration of Independence with a Declaration of Interdependence. The last words of the Declaration of Independence are all about the obligations we hold to one another, the urgencies that we see within one another, brothers and sisters, and it was almost like a command to every generation of what the standard should be in how we treat one another, how we work for one another, how we pledge each other to each other's well-being. They basically said after the Declaration of Independence, which they literally knew that signing that Declaration of Independence put their necks in a guillotine.
They were breaking, they were rebellious, breaking with the course of human events and declaring independence from an authoritarian government at that time, England. And they said, in order to make this work, to thrive, to survive, as if a message to future generations, they said, we must mutually pledge to one another, we must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's what we owe each other. That's the kind of commitment it takes to make this experiment happen. We must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. We, today in America, how often are we living up to that idea of sacred honor? That word sacred speaks to something that is deeper, that is not material, that's not in a bank account. It is something deeper than that. Calling to this idea of sacred honor is calling to something spiritual. The Constitution is a piece of paper with ink. If it does not live, the spirit of the Constitution, the spirit of our founding ideals, do not live on our hearts, they can't exist other places. And undergirding all of that was philosophy, was faith traditions about what it takes to create a more beloved community. And so today we're talking about that. Hakeem and I wanted to sit here and talk about those traditions that undergird in the shadow of this building here, where they are going to be pushing in a matter of hours a bill that will cut food from the hungry, medicine from the sick, care for the elderly, support for the disabled. Is that pledging lives and fortunes and sacred honor? No. It is all to cut money out of that and give tax cuts that will disproportionately accrue to the wealthiest in America, who are the wealthiest in the world. That is a violation of the very words that were put onto the paper of our founders that mean nothing if they're not living in our hearts. And so I love what Martin Luther did. A time where he saw the corruption of the church in violating its values. He walked up to the wall of the church and he pounded in a statement of honor, and he said, "Here I stand. I can do no other. So help me God." That put his neck in the noose. His defiance. We're not asking people to give their lives. We're not called to get on freedom rides knowing that our buses will be bombed. We're not called to march over the Pettus Bridge, a bridge named for an arch leader of the KKK. We're not called to storm beaches in Normandy or to stand in front of bullets for our nation. But in this moral moment, when people's health care is at stake, when people's lives are at stake, when the food for our children is at stake, the question is what will you do? And so I want you to introduce yourself, Pastor. I want you to speak to this moral moment. I want you to tell us from your faith tradition why it is so important, as we learn from our faith, our shared faith, that faith without works is dead.
Thank you very much, Senator. Let's really applaud what he has just said. I'm Reverend Jimmy Hawkins. I'm with the Presbyterian Church, and I am the advocacy director for our Washington office right across the street.
I love that building. You guys caused some good trouble
yes,
over in that building.
Exactly, in
right
the United Methodist building.
Court.
And also for our ministry at the United Nations. Also, I'm the tri-chair for the Washington Interfaith Religious Committee. So I'm here to talk about how this is a spiritual moment. And this has to be a spiritual movement that we are embarking upon. Because this budget, any budget that hurts people is against who we are as people of faith. Any budget that cuts food stamps, SNAP benefits, any budget that cuts health care, any budget that takes away from those who are the neediest in society, this has nothing to do with a faith movement. And one of the things that really hurts my heart is that many of the individuals who are supporting and endorsing this budget will say things like, well, I'm going to pray for you. You are in my thoughts and prayers. and yet we'll vote for budgets that will injure those who need help the most. So I've got a few statements that I want to read. This proposed budget would impact the communities that I serve in the Presbyterian Church. While many of them are not directly impoverished, we have ministries in the church that feed hungry people. We endorse advocacy for health care benefits and to see that they are increased. And we also have food pantries like churches all around this country, and it's going to really challenge the resources that we have. But also, this budget does not reflect the needs of the nation. And currently, there are there are millions of people living in poverty in this nation. The federal poverty level for a family of four is only $32,000. Family of four. In what state, in what city can a family of four live in under $32,000? And for a single individual, $15,000.
I can. When you say the poverty level, we have one of the highest child poverty levels of any developed nation. We were able to cut that in half under Biden for the 1 year when we expanded the child tax credit, but we were one vote shy from making it permanent. So what it basically has said is that child poverty is not an inevitable conclusion in our country, but a policy choice. Who are we giving tax breaks to? Struggling families that can get more back from their tax dollars, more back, a refundable tax credit, or the billionaires? And the wealth of our country is not in the bank accounts of millionaires and billionaires. The wealth of any nation, especially in a global knowledge-based economy, is the genius and well-being of the children. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And mostly this budget does not reflect the heart of the American people, and especially people of faith. We do not want to see anyone hungry, especially a child, an elderly person, someone with disability, someone in need. There are charges of corruption that we're already putting too much money into these programs, but most of the recipients of benefits are not young, they're not healthy, they're not able to work. There are individuals who are mostly children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, and mental illness. They are struggling to meet the needs of their families, and many of them without reliable transportation or child care. As a minister of the gospel of Christ Jesus, I am called to be compassionate, caring, generous, and responsible, a steward of all that I own, and we're called to be responsible stewards of all that we own, recognizing that everything that we have comes from a generous God, and we are to be cheerful givers to those who are without. Jesus told a multitude of parables, charging those with wealth to be responsible and generous. The parable of the rich old fool and the rich man and Lazarus issue a warning to the wealthiest nation in the history of the world that the failure to utilize our resources on behalf of the poor is a sin against God. Matthew 25 has Jesus saying, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was sick and you ministered unto me. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. This one statement addresses our current responses to hunger, health care, immigration, and poverty. If we are going to proclaim that America is the greatest nation in the world, then we must ask ourselves, by what standards? Are we great in compassion? Are we great in mercy? Are we great in generosity? Are we great in setting an example of what it means to be a democracy that allows everyone to have opportunity, a voice, and a vote? Or do we prefer to be the greatest in accumulating wealth held by the few and the greatest military with the capability of destroying the world several times over? Let us be great in our response to a God of love, a God who asks us the question, what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. Let us be great in caring for children of this nation and around the world by generating budgets that meet the needs of those whose lives would improve with just a little bit of help, and they can go on and make contributions to the well-being of others. Let us be a spiritual nation that walks and talks by our faith, not just saying words of empty rhetoric, saying that we believe in God and that we will pray for you, but by doing things in order to make real, as James said, that faith without works is dead.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you. We are now. We're going to stay in church this morning. We've had Muslim leaders, rabbis, but we're going to stay in church right now because one of the men who has been a true deep source. I think I can speak for Hakeem, and I'm going to pass the microphone to him to give the final introduction. But one of the men that has been such a source of strength to me, an inspiration, a moral love, in like a North Star, as well as an anchor, keeping those in high positions grounded and anchored with the people, is here with us right now. He is at the bottom of the steps, and we are going to walk this mic down. Is that the plan? I'm going to give it to you, and you're going to walk it down. But I want to let Hakeem say a word about Reverend Barber, and then we'll get the mic down to him.
Well, throughout the day, I think we're on hour 4 now on the steps of the Capitol, and we have been hearing from a variety of different leaders, civil rights leaders, educators, of course, men and women of faith, of all faiths, Christian leaders, Jewish leaders, Muslim leaders. Andre Carson was here with us just a little while ago. But it's an honor for us to be joined. So thankful that he's graced our presence. One of the mighty men in the country who leans in to his faith to make life better for the least of us, for the least, the lost, and the left behind, the poor, the sick, and the afflicted. And so we're thankful that Reverend Barber has joined us. He had initiated Moral Mondays, and hopefully he'll talk to us a little bit about what Moral Mondays was all about down in North Carolina. But we're so thankful for his presence, and let's give it up for Reverend Barber.
They can come that way. See those folks back up.
So you can see the Capitol behind him. Come this way.
First of all, I want to thank Senator Booker and our leader, Jeffries, for, on a Sunday, convening this public gathering conversation. And I want to thank your staff for making provisions for those of us that have ADA issues. You know, because when you care, you got to care all the way around. And I want to encourage y'all to come down a little bit closer to the ground so that folks with ADA, because some folk, even in this crowd, can't move up. And we need everybody on the field for this one. And we need everybody's face and everybody's body. I was thinking yesterday, Senator Booker, when I got this call from Jeffries about coming, and how in 2016 we did a national call for moral revival in 2016. And in that 2016, we said then that, and I almost got arrested saying this in Kentucky, in the Kentucky State Legislature, when the extremists were controlling the governor's office. When they asked us why were we there, were you Republican or Democrat, we said no, some things, Republican and Democrat, they're not liberal versus conservative, but they're right versus wrong. They're right versus wrong. And when I heard Senator Booker lift that the other day on the floor of the Senate, if we can get that right and get that clarity about why we're here, we may be elected in parties, but once we get elected, we have to have a principle bigger than even a party. Because actually in 2018, we found out we had 140 million poor and low-wage people in this country. 2018. And we've not raised the minimum wage in this country since 2009. 2009.
2009. So this is a moment. Moral moments don't just go after any one group. What moral moments do, moral moments speak to those who are trying to go backwards. But moral moments also say to those that want to go forward, it's time to push harder and deeper and stronger. Moral moments cut both ways. The Bible says that, my friend Jimmy Hawkins will quote in Scripture, that the Word of God is like a double-edged sword. It cutteth both ways. And I thought about today, 98 years ago today, Coretta Scott came on today in Alabama. When she spoke on the other side of this building at Solidarity Day, June 19th, 1968, her husband had been murdered, and yet she gathered